Hello, this is Jennifer Rowley and I'm just about to start the ePortfolio webinar for today, April the 14th at 4 p.m. Welcome to everybody that's already signed in. Today I have some slides that I'll be speaking to and they'll be shared on the screen. Please feel free to enter questions and Dr. John Taylor's here to answer those with me, and let's get going. The discussion about how we best prepare ourselves for ePortfolios is really the focus that we're going to have today. Across tertiary institutions in Australia, there are a lot of people that are already using ePortfolios, and so today it's not my job to change what you're doing or to even give advice, I suppose, on whether or not what you're doing is right for you. As you can see from our first slide today, that this is a collaborative OLT extension grant with University of Canberra, University of New South Wales, Charles Sturt University, and of course Sydney University, and I'm from the Conservatorium of Music. So this is the first in a series of professional development for staff who are using ePortfolios, but please remember the important thing is that you're working within your institution and you've got experts there that can really help you. I'm hoping as a collaborative webinar that we get to share and make connections and build networks with each other so that we can continue this support. Can I please offer my thanks to Jennifer Munday at Charles Sturt University in Albury, Patsy Polly at Uni of New South Wales in Sydney, and Anita Collins at the University of Canberra for their work on this project. So hopefully that's given everybody a little bit of time to get settled and organised, and let's get started. Today we're going to look, I suppose, at a global view of ePortfolios, and it's really important that we understand that ePortfolios can be both a process and it can be both a product as well. It's not easily defined, and some might question why we actually define an ePortfolio as a product. So maybe today we could start with looking at electronic portfolio as a process. I'm very pleased to present to you all the good that I've worked with in electronic portfolios over the 5 or 6 years that I've been involved. But also there is, of course, in anything, criticisms of both the process and the product. So I see electronic portfolios as a learner-centered instructional technique, if I think about the process. And as you'll see from this first slide, I've tried to make these not statements but questions, because I think it's important that we continue to have the discourse about learner-centered, learner-engaged, and maybe even the idea of ownership and self-regulated learning as far as this instructional technique is concerned. Do we have a shared awareness? Well, from most of the literature that I read, I probably would say that it's not a shared awareness at the moment about ePortfolios, but maybe we need to ask the question about what clarity of definitions is really required. Many of you are using ePortfolio as both a process and a product very successfully, because I read most of the research and literature that comes out of Australia about electronic portfolios. What I think we don't have, though, across the Australian tertiary sector is a shared meaning. And the shared meaning that I'm talking about is about the need that we need to really specifically look at for making ePortfolio a learning tool. The more that I talk to my students about the process, the more I understand that they believe that an ePortfolio assists their learning, enhances their learning. The question we've got to ask ourselves, and really the main aim of these webinar series, is how can it actually improve teaching quality? How do we use the tool effectively so that the ePortfolio as a product can engage the learner in some longer term learning and maybe some lifelong learning? And what finally is the role that the portfolio plays in supporting improvements in teaching and student outcomes? I think that's probably an institutional question, and probably one that sits in the realm of institutional agendas. So what is an ePortfolio? Well, it's got many, many definitions. We see it as a process and a product. As I said before, process, it's a learning and teaching tool. As a product, it can be a range of things. It can be a community space, it can be a personal space, or it can be a combination of the two. For us here in the music faculty at the University of Sydney, it's certainly an electronic collection of evidence that shows a student's learning journey over time. Now, what do I mean by a learning journey? Lots of the experiences that I've had working with people who are using ePortfolio as a product in their universities have them as showcases. And they use them as a showcase to present a student's development in their learning across maybe a subject, perhaps a range of subjects, or maybe even in a degree program. Here at the music faculty, at Conservatorium of Music, we are certainly using it as embedded into our music degree program, and so we see it as a learning journey over time. In 2014, September last year, the Australian Council of Deans of Education actually stressed a need for a renewal in teacher education, and I'm using that as an example because I'm training musicians to be music teachers, and I know quite a few of the people who have signed up for this webinar are also in the position of teacher education. So what we need to think about is, as a learning tool, does ePortfolio actually assist in that development of renewal and relevance? Well, I think that it probably does have a great contributor for that. So a function of the ePortfolio could be documenting skills and learning, and that seems to be, as a showcase ePortfolio product, that's how we've used it here. Now, our students report to us that it's enjoyable. And they report that it's enjoyable because we set specific tasks where we ask them to record and track their development through what we call reflective practice. So they're asked to, and we all know what reflective practice is, we hear it quite often. We ask them to evaluate their learning. We actually ask them to synthesize what they've learned and try to apply it into different contexts. Remember, I'm training musicians to be music teachers, so that's not a difficult way of doing it. And so we find that our students report to us that they're able to engage in more higher order thinking skills. I've put on your slide there as HOTS. Excuse me. From our perspective, our students report to us that there's an opportunity for reflection and for them to actually feel quite comfortable with how they associate a whole range of different educational programs. They monitor their performance. I think it's really important that for our students, they're able to give us as teachers a pretty honest evaluation of how they think their program is running. And I don't know whether you're the same as me, but my students certainly don't seem backward in coming forward. And so if they giving feedback to us, then I'm also asking them through a reflective way to actually give feedback to themselves as well. I'll give you an example. As I said, our ePortfolio process and product is embedded into the 4-year degree program here, undergraduate bachelor's degree of music. In the first 5 weeks of semester 1 of first year, we're asking the students to reflect on the set readings that we give them. And these set readings are a combination of what it's like to be a music teacher in a classroom, what it's like to be a musician in a creative context, and more importantly, what it's like to actually label the pedagogies that they've learnt their music through you know, the 10 years that they've been learning their instrument. And so as they reflect on these readings, we ask them very specifically to talk about how they see their own progress as an educational, as a student in an educational context. And it's really interesting to think that these newbies, only 5 weeks here and having done most of their set readings, contribute to their portfolio this very first contribution of reflection. It's interesting for me because I can see in some of them a very great leap between that synthesis of learning, of real world learning, and that sort of movement from a surface learning into a deep learning. And so I think that that's for us a real positive of this, one of our first ePortfolio tasks. Of course, we don't send our students out with a list of this is what you must do. We actually give them lots of good modelling about how to function within the process of creating a portfolio, and why they understand the importance of not just sticking things into it in that sort of showcase way or presentation way, but that we actually talk to them about the concept of classifying and curating their evidence. And we link this very clearly to their graduate attributes because we want them to be lifelong learners. Finally, some of the work that we've been doing here is looking at how the portfolio product encourages them in a sense of in educational opportunity or employability. We're very lucky to have a professional practice internship here for our undergraduates, where they get to be placed in either in a form of arts industry. So whether it's arts administration or working with Opera Australia in their orchestra, getting some master classes, doing mock auditions with the Sydney Symphony, and a variety of different things. We also work very closely with our region conservatoriums, where they go out and work with students that don't have musical opportunities that they've had during their time. So a typical website, and I thank John here for these graphics, is, as you can see there, we look in our computer, we upload to a website, we store on a web server of some kind, usually a cloud, and then it immediately goes global. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a very usual way of practicing, and pretty much social media works that way as well. The benefit of the ePortfolio versus a website, and I'm talking about the product here, is that it's stored in a more secure way and it's private content. And I think that we need to encourage our students to experience the safety of working that way, because they're pretty familiar with working the other way. So who is the ePortfolio really for? Well, for me, the ePortfolio is for the students. It's a process where they learn to evaluate, synthesize, transfer, reflect, and positively engage in their learning. Now, we ensure that most of the engagement that they do through their ePortfolio is research-led, And so we ask them, like that example of the first year task, where they're actually reading literature and we're asking them to comment and reflect on it. We're not using big words in the first 5 weeks of class by saying, let's write me an annotated bibliography. We're using a more gentle approach. But the ePortfolio product, unlike the process, actually has the opportunity to have a variety of end users. And because it's a private space or a community space, depending on how your portfolio product or the platform or the way that you go through it works, they've got their friends and their peers that they can share with in their class. And most of our students have said to us that whilst they really like the fact that it's a private space, they are equally benefited by the feedback they get from friends and peers. So my advice here from a teaching point of view is that you need to allow lots of opportunities for your students to share their portfolio contents and even the way that they approach their portfolio at various times with their friends and peers. I'll give you an example. In our second year, first semester unit of study, we ask our students to create a group electronic poster and to actually store that as evidence in their portfolio. It's specifically on a metaphor of teaching music, and because they're doing it in their individual portfolios, they also get an opportunity to share that with each other. I don't need to tell you, probably already know that our university uses PebblePad, and for those that are new to the PebblePad journey, which I think some are in CSU, or you're moving into Pebble Plus, you know, that's a tool that does have lots of opportunities for students to share. Maybe not the first thing that our students think of sharing their portfolio with their family, but as we know, family are significant in a lot of the adolescents, and these young adults are still at the end of their adolescence, unless you're working with mature age students, that the family is still really important. This gives them a nice safe place to show, you know, their learning in one spot. And also, we're now encouraging our students, because of the work that we're doing with our professional practice internship, to start thinking about their portfolios as an employment tool and to share it with employers. And of course, there's me on a good day sharing, looking at my students' portfolios. Maybe this is not a really important thing to mention, but it's been evident to me over the time that the portfolio as a product doesn't really lend itself to be marked. My students won't do them unless I actually assign a mark percentage to it, but I tend to do it as a completed requirements. So if their assessment task, let's use the example of the group electronic poster, has to be done, and it is an assessment task and part of the unit of study, I do actually ensure that it's requirements according to the outcomes set for that assessment task there, but I tend not to assign a mark to it. But I'd be really interested to see what everybody else thinks about that. A lot of the research supports that they should be rated. So remember, there's specific end users and there's specific functions. So what is a creative and an independent graduate at the moment? Well, we're very keenly looking at creativity in our graduates, and our university's institutional agenda is to make sure that the students are independent when they graduate, because that's what the Australian government has one of its key strategic goals at the moment: work readiness and employability. I think if you talk to the students sensibly about the skills that they develop as they create their ePortfolio product, so in the ePortfolio process, I do get responses from them that they positively see it as gaining skills that they can use in a variety of different areas. And I think that they would all agree that they want to find a job in a very competitive market. So how then does the portfolio actually fit into the equation with institutional agendas and a range of other agendas? I think that's really up to your institution. For us, we have a platform that's supported centrally, and so for us, applying an ePortfolio process is not as challenging because we actually have the ePortfolio product that we can also produce at the end. So the benefit of the process is, as I said before, this private or public space. But what I really like about it is that it's almost like a playground, a sandpit, whatever you'd like to call it, a personal space, where the students can actually include items of personal experience rather than just information storage or putting their assessment tasks into there. I see the process of the assessment task in giving them good training, and I think as tertiary teachers we're obliged to model good pedagogical practice, because in the end that is really what's giving them their learning experience and giving them the experience of enjoying and understanding the content that they have to work with. I believe that the student is the creator, and they really are the main player in this process, not you as the teacher. And I really do believe that the process contributes to deeper learning and understanding, and I do actually have quite a bit of years of research and student comments and focus groups and interviews and a variety of other things that we've done that would really give clarity to that statement. So in a sense, you as a teacher becomes the organiser, the facilitator or the coach, rather than the teacher or the instructor in this particular process. I think underneath it all, we also model good technology use and integration. Now that's really important for me, who is in charge of training teachers, going out and working with our generation of technology users. I don't want to use the word digital natives because there's too much debate around that. But I think that it's really important that we can utilise as much good technology as we possibly can. So the benefit of the ePortfolio product, I must apologise, I actually had no voice on Saturday, but it seems to have just come back today. I do believe that the product does assist in identity development and a sense of self. As students contribute more to the actual portfolio product, they edit, they re-edit, they curate, they throw out, they analyse, they evaluate, they create, in a sense, their own way of judging what's valuable and what actually belongs in the portfolio as something that they might use for a range of different users. And I think that kind of self-regulation gives them a sense of ownership, and it's really nice to see them integrating with the learning and teaching environment this way. As I said before, I think that there is real-world potential and lifelong learning in building this product and actually building this portfolio. When I went through teacher training in the mid-80s, it was about creating paper-based portfolios that sort of resembled telephone books at the time. I don't know that I was ever given very much instruction about how to discriminate effectively, so I put everything into it. And quite often this is one of the roles that you as a tertiary teacher needs to really think about, how you guide and facilitate some of these pathways for the students, so they have not necessarily good choices, but that they actually explore the choices of what goes into their product, into their portfolio. I haven't had too many comments apart from difficulty with some of the platforms at times, but all the students report to me, not all, actually I've got a few of them that report they didn't enjoy it because they actually didn't enjoy their degree program, but a lot of them actually enjoy the, the building the ePortfolio. And most of our students build a web folio because that's probably one of the most useful tools inside PebblePad for them. I'm not saying it's the only useful tool, I'm just saying it's one of the most useful tools for our students inside there. But my background's in gifted education and cognitive psychology, and so I like to see that my students are not only engaged in, real world problem solving, critical thinking, but it also, I like to think that they have challenges as well. And what I've found with the students that I work with is that when they build their ePortfolio product, they actually feel a sense of control, they feel a sense of choice. They are challenged at times not only by the technology but by the tasks and the complexity of it. But I think what's really nice is that as I feed back to them and comment on their products, they see that there's a real caring about how they are engaging in their learning. And I've taken that from Lani Kanevsky. John, any more?
Yeah, Marlena again, but I can't think.
I can speak now.
Oh,
I can speak now. It's sorry, and we can't put questions because the question pod or the chat pod is gone. So I just wanted to know.
Okay.
Yep, and if you can resize it, John, it'll not cover the. Yep, excellent. Thank you. I was just wondering, Jennifer, how you get these 5 C's of control, choice, challenge, complexity with teachers that are actually overstretched. I know you've got caring there, but there's only so many hours in a day. Doesn't matter how much you give care, students seem to need more PD.
Yeah, and look, Marlena, I'm not going to dismiss your question as one of that's a changing world, but I'm probably going to start it with that's the changing client at the moment. The students do feel that there's greater access to you. Some of mine believe that I'm actually reading text messages and emails 24 hours a day. I'm not sure why they think that, but there is a very full life for a teacher. I think not just in tertiary, but in primary, secondary, and more likely in early childhood as well. I think that the way that we approach this is by looking at both the benefits of the product and the process of ePortfolio. The more that we give our students control, the more that we have an expectation that they're going to sensibly engage in their learning as an adult, then I think that the electronic portfolio really does have that potential to help them self-regulate. I don't know if that answers your question completely.
With the new tools, I know you said you don't want to think about it as digital natives, but we actually have quite a few people who aren't digital natives. And so not only are you helping them with the 5 C's, but you're also tending to need to support staff that do that for you.
Look, I think that's a really, as you can see, I'm struggling, and John and I are struggling with the technology even today to hold this webinar. I mean, I think that's an ongoing issue. How do we say to them, look, I'm sorry, I'm not in charge of the technology, I'm only in charge of the pedagogy? I think that is a really difficult one. The way we approached it was probably unique. I had built into an OLT grant, some one-on-one technology time with the students, with a person that really knew the platform of PebblePad very well. And I think that was a unique situation, definitely. And that's not going to be afforded to everybody.
I've got a question from Nikki, who said, how do students participate in that community? I.e., what are they doing or discussing? How important is that aspect?
I've just been asked a question about the students participating in the community, in the ePortfolio community, and how important it is. I'll just tell you a very short version of the story. As part of that OLT grant, I had also built in some student encounter days, and some of you may have even come to Sydney University in 2012 or 2014 to either one of those days. My goal for that was to actually provide professional development to tertiary teachers by allowing the students to talk about their portfolios from a user's point of view, both the process and the product. What came out of that was the students actually had never seen each other's portfolios before. And so they were learning about not just what other people put in their portfolios, but how they were listening to the explanation of how students made those choices, why they wanted to change things, what were the challenges. Pages in their portfolio quite simple, and why did they make some of them quite complex? And so it was a really enlightening time for us to see the students sharing with it. The way we allow them to share with it is through getting assets, sorry, that's the terminology that's used within PebblePad, within their seminar presentations. So in a particular unit of study, let's just take popular music studies for example, if they had contributed something to their asset store in their webfolio, might have been a composition or a recording, then we actually ask them to share that, sort of open up their PebblePad to the class and to share that. I think it's probably also important for you to see how that fits into your specific degree program and subject that you're using. Certainly we've explored the benefit of students mentoring each other, so actually working alongside each other during that portfolio process or the building of the portfolio product. When you have no grant money, then life is certainly a little bit more difficult. So not that I want any more people competing with me with my next OLT or ARC application, but you know, I think it's probably really important that we put this on a stage that the portfolio process as a pedagogy, as a tool, on the stage and try and get funded from it, from learning and teaching. John, was that the next question?
Yep.
Okay, so, there you go, I've answered that a little bit. Consider student mentoring when there's no grant money. Yeah. We've certainly explored that, and it's been quite successful. Again, we were just asked, you know, do the students all say to us they have no time either to sit down and really work in that. So I try and build those opportunities, those mentoring opportunities into class time, which seems to be more and more crammed these days, and we seem to be having more students in there and less time to teach them the same content. So that might be for another day. I hope that answered some of the questions. Look, often students say to us, I don't really need to do this portfolio product because I actually am on social media and I get all my things, you know, into the spots. You know, I store all the things where I want them to be. Look, we've explored some of the social media and how it might fit in. Look, there's just a couple of examples of us there. Facebook is definitely viewed by employers. I have employers here twice a year just to touch base with them through our professional practice internship. And they say that, you know, before they employ anybody, they certainly go onto Facebook and try and see whether people are dressed appropriately or inappropriately or making, you know, correct comments. And so we do say to them that the product might resemble social media in the way that you create it, but it is quite different. Twitter's, it's great for communication. It's used very effectively here in lectures during face-to-face sessions, but it's not really suitable to show employers. And, more perhaps age-appropriate is Yammer, ResearchGate, LinkedIn. Is that really where they're up to? Well, I know a lot of students are already into LinkedIn. But maybe, that's not really the correct way. We see very much this portfolio product as a good training ground for them to learn good etiquette and appropriate use of this type of media. Sorry, just I'm going to have a little cough and get another drink of water. What we really encourage the students to do is to redesign or to design and create, the actual visual ePortfolio product. We ask them to, perhaps even custom make banners that sit down either side. In PebblePad, you can that banner and they can personalise it. But we actually ask them to personalise their actual learning. So even though there are specific tasks that they contribute into their portfolio product, we say to them, don't start everything with, well, I'm now reflecting on these 3 readings, and we say to them, if there's a way that you'd like to answer that or complete that assessment task that's not in a written reflection, if you want to make a movie, if you'd like to take a series of photos and create a storyboard, if you'd like to write a composition that fits in with our students that answers those questions, and then just go through and actually annotate it somehow, then we like them to do that. Do many students actually use it as a private reflection? Well, a lot of our students blog. They blog inside their portfolio product. Now, PebblePad allows them to do that, but they do it also as part of, particularly when they're off campus, when they're in their internship or on their prac teaching. Oh, that's got a big question mark on it, the screen there. John?
Yep. Press play in the bottom when you hover over it. There's
Okay. I just wanted to give my voice a rest and let you hear one of our students, Blade, who's given permission for this to be shared.
The whole point of the webfolio and the ePortfolio is to essentially have an online collection of your experiences, your achievements, and everything that presents you as a professional musician or teacher or any kind of field. Anything that, as you can see at the top, it says a collection of documents and information that present the academic and professional experiences of me, specifically in the field of music education. The good thing about PebblePad, firstly, is this idea of assets. And so every time you create a new asset, it gives you the option to tell you what it is. So how do I say that? You add a new post, which is just a bland insert text here. But the better parts of that is you can input an experience, so a meeting or experience, an activity. You input reflections, a particular talent or achievement that you have, an action plan, and all these different things. So if we go into a reflection, this is one of my favourite parts about PebblePad, is the fact that it gives you all these prompts for a title, the date, described what it is you thought, done or experienced, what have you learnt from this. So having these fields to work with is definitely one of the benefits that I've found of the ePortfolio system, particularly PebblePad. Once you've created one of these assets, as they're called, they all end up in this little asset store. So I've got, for instance, There's a music philosophy, which is a statement, and they're all organised with these little icons here. So these are referees here, jobs that I've had, files that I've uploaded, and then down here is various prizes and things that I've input the details of. And once you've got all those collected, for instance, you can build a CV on this website. So I've got things like my qualifications, employment, because this would be a music education CV on my behalf. So I've got beliefs, all various achievements that and then my references. And then there's the webfolio, which is the overarching point of PebblePad, which is a next step up from a CV, which is then a collection of collections, in a way. So it presents you as the person, and I've included my CV there. But I've also included my statement of what is sort of my current philosophy of music, and then you can just continually add new documents, such as this one, which is a presentation of a professional internship that I did last year, where I travelled to a regional conservatorium. And you can just continually add to that, and it shows who you are and your development as a professional in whatever field you're using the webfolio from. This is what my actual webfolio looks like. I've created backgrounds, I've created a banner, and you have the option to print it, certainly, to a PDF, which is just handy in itself, because then you're not just trying to figure out a way to share it electronically. You can have physical copies if you want, but you can also now email it to people and share it in that way. A lot of these assets I actually have on my computer. Anyway, for instance, this professional internship document I had to supply for an assessment here, so then I decided to also upload it to PebblePad. But as far as I know, you can publish it to the web. Can you download them? Sorry, Jennifer, you can.
I think most of the assets you can.
Yeah, well, pretty much everything. Oh, actually, yes, you can. When you go, I saw it. Yeah, there you go. Download file. So you can save them all, and you can print them to PDF, like I showed you in the other thing. We've had to add to PebblePad over the course of our studies here. So there've been a few different assignments, all from subjects under the music education umbrella, that we've had to add to this. So it could be from all sorts of different things that in fact, the professional internship was sort of an extra thing that I did on the side as a different course. So it wasn't required or anything like that. But I thought it was good because it showed some of my professional development. So this is from a range of different things, but all from my experience here so far at the conservatorium. Actually, I think I should probably show you that. So if you go, you can go into view, or you can click edit, or once you've gone into the view, this little button up here allows you to edit it. And then down below these tabs, so you can add a new page, an existing page from somewhere, a collection, which I don't know what collections are, I haven't used them yet, or one of your existing assets. And then you would just choose, so I might click the About Me, and you just click Confirm. And now this About Me is there, and you can just click and drag and move it up there, move it anywhere, you can rearrange them. It's very easy to present it exactly how you want to.
So that was Blade. He was in his third year. He actually completed at the end of last year, but that was after 3 years of working with Pebble Classic. And then about a week before, or 10 days before the presentation, we changed to Pebble Plus. So in that 7 to 10 days, he was able to go through and really he taught himself how to use the technology. Here's an example of another student's webfolio in Pebble Classic. As you can see there, she also has a philosophy of music education because that is one of our assignment tasks. But you can see here that Danica, and again we've been given permission to use these examples from the students, has really personalised her webfolio page. And from the side toolbar there, you see that what she's included in there is a blog. She's talked about her part-time teaching, which is her tutoring, but she also sees herself, very much in a conducting and performance and leadership role as well. One of the real benefits of students blogging within their product of the ePortfolio is that it gives them an opportunity to document a whole range of things that you're doing. And as you can see through here, she's talking specifically about a jazz unit of study that she taught to year 10s during her one of her pracs. And she's almost used it like a bit of a toolbox. She's got links in there to various resources that she'd use. So she's got a terrific, as I say, a toolbox or a toolkit here if she wants to go back. It's all documented here, almost like a lesson plan in a sense. She talks very clearly about her own development, and so I see the process of ePortfolio is very much also about students understanding themselves and understanding who they're becoming and how they're developing. And I think that's one of the real benefits of them creating this, even though I'm making them create it and I'm making them think about it. They're engaging in a really authentic pedagogic practice, and I think that's really important as well. Blade talked a little bit about the assets or the artifacts. That's pretty much belongs to Pebble, but you can see there that you can collect documents, and so the ePortfolio in this sense is a storage area for a range of evidence. And in fact, we started our portfolio work here when professional graduate standards for beginning teachers came in, and we wanted our students to be able to identify and understand what the different elements were inside the professional standards, but also for them to understand that they had to be able to justify or find evidence for that. At the time, our students saw that, that evidence was quite limited, and we tried to tell them that it could be anything. It could be a reflection, it could be a blog, a plaque report, an award, a citation, an article that they've written. We have an undergraduate journal here at Conservatoire of Music, so sometimes they contribute articles to it. But they, very importantly, can include sound and video files and photos. And it's really up to you, depending on your discipline, of what else you might want to put into what we call this evidence or assets or artifacts. So I'm going to think about stopping very soon, but I want to include a little bit of discussion about to leave you with at your institutions. And so, you might want to follow this through a little bit later, or we might start with this in our next webinar, but thinking about the evidence that you've encountered in your students' learning, thinking about whether they're just trying to demonstrate a skill or whether or not they're actually showing you some real development. When you plan your ePortfolio tasks, try and encourage them to think about whether or not it's something that belongs to them privately or more something that can be shared with others in a public space. Now, our students can actually share through Pebble by just sharing the link or downloading it or emailing it to somebody to give them access to one of their assets or to their web folio. And so we do encourage our students to share that one. But also for them to think about their assets and their evidence about whether it's something that's immediately understandable to peers. And this makes them really think about how they curate and collect their evidence. And I think that's a really important skill. So for our students, we say what could be in your web folio. We give them a list like this, but we don't limit it to that. We don't tell them how to create that web folio. The ePortfolio as a product has to be something that A, meets the assessment task criterion and can actually be graded as being met requirements, but it also needs to be something that they feel quite a lot of ownership over as well. Of course, the graduate attributes and the employability skills are something that our university has as its strategic goal, and that might not be something that's actually in your university's one. My final example is from Katrina. Again, this is in Pebble Classic because that was what she was working with when she was here. It's quite similar to Danica's in a sense, but she actually had an academic exchange to a university over in the USA. And so she wanted that first and foremost up on her webfolio page. And the important thing for her was to actually say that it was not just something that she undertook to broaden her musical educational knowledge, but she also wanted to talk about how it broadened her life experience. And so she wanted to put that straight up there. And Katrina did use her webfolio for employment and successfully got a full-time position at the end of her undergraduate studies here, which, as we all know, when we train teachers, is not actually the easiest thing to happen. She also had a musical experience on a field trip when we took the students to Bali to engage in that pedagogic practice of a non-Western learning experience. And again, she really wanted to put that up there as one of the things that she had done. So, do they control their own learning? I think that we go back to the 5 C's. They have got a choice of evidence, and they have got challenge in trying to manage not just the curation and the classification of that, but the organisation of it. I think that if they wanted to, they could plan and set personal development targets from an employment or graduate attribute point of view. And I think they're also able to identify gaps through a review of and reflection on what's in their portfolio. Interestingly, we ran a pilot with the composition students here, and they were quite reticent to include any of their compositions in their first year because they believed that they wouldn't be as good as their 4th year ones. And it took us a lot of convincing to say to them that it wasn't really staying there forever. The idea of putting their composition in first year was for them to learn and to grow and to reflect on that. I think it's really great that the opportunity for mentoring and peer feedback is there. But I think, you know, as a teacher of all learners, the ePortfolio process and product can actually assist you in gaining a deeper, more rounded insight into your students, because you do get to read what they write about themselves and what they include as their assets and artefacts. You know, for me, and I do miss yard duty quite a lot, as I haven't been a classroom teacher for some time in a school. But, you know, that was where I really got to see my students, you know, how they interacted during that time where they weren't in the classroom. And this kind of gives me a little bit of an idea of being able to see them outside of the classroom in a different space. So it actually gives me an opportunity to look at maybe some more individualised academic advice or you know, within the context of what their needs might be. So again, what kinds of experience do you want your students to have? Are these experiences that could be documented? Are there commonalities between different disciplines? They're things that you need to talk about as institutions when you think about how you're going to employ your ePortfolio as both a process and a product. I believe that it caters for individual needs. I think that it exposes them to a really valuable pedagogy, and I think it affords them that experience in peer collaboration and community. And I think also this idea of ownership and control and challenge, and hopefully enjoyment for them. Does it create an independent graduate? Are they more aware of their learning? Do they have more of a shared meaning of what needs to be developed as an ePortfolio tool? I think these are sort of things that you need to talk about in either your discipline-specific groups or in your institutional groups, so that you understand, you know, whether or not there's a learning and teaching benefit of introducing the portfolios or continuing to work with the portfolios. Certainly for us, there are institutional agendas for higher education to not just meet teaching quality, but also to explore areas of this work readiness or employable. So I might just skip that slide. This has actually come from QUT, ePortfolio Concepts. It's quite a complex slide, but one that maybe you could start using as a discussion through your own staff development. PD sessions, and part of this OLT grant is also for Jenny, myself, Patsy and Anita to come and work face to face with you in your institutions. We're not experts in ePortfolio process and product, we're just people that have used them and work with them and feel committed to them. I would certainly encourage you to continue discussions about your students specifically, and I've given you some questions there that you might think about. If you'd like to look at number 5 there, the introduction of ePortfolio require program redesign, that's something you're going to have to answer yourself. But certainly in our case, it did. And this is an example of the curriculum map that we designed here before we introduced ePortfolios into the 4 years of the degree program. So,
a couple of questions from Mylena.
Okay, a couple of questions very quickly because it's 2 minutes to 5.
Okay, Mylena's asking, what time frame is the webfolio created over?
That webfolio is created over a 3-year period. So students are asked in first year to think about exploring PebblePad without doing the webfolio, and then they start really designing their webfolio in the second year. We're a 4-year undergraduate program here.
And the second question was, when do we have time to visit Charles Sturt University at Wagga?
I'm not sure who asked the questions when they've got time to visit Charles Sturt at Wagga. I don't know where you're from, whether you're from Wagga or from Albury, but yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe you'd like to rewrite that question, I can answer it for you. Look, thanks very much to John, who's worked with this presentation for staff development here at Sydney Uni, but also for managing the webinar techniques and discussion today. Thank you all that participated and made it useful for learning and teaching. I would direct you, as I did in the email that told you about the link today, to our project website, ePortfolioassist.com.au. There's lots of good resources there, and I look forward to working with you either through the next webinar or face-to-face when I see you at your institution. Thank you, and goodbye.